Hey you guys, today I'm going to make a video on grafting because I think it's an important skill to add to your garden arsenal. Grafting is the ability to put on a different cultivar on the same rootstock. So you can have multiple cultivars, multiple fruits, as long as they're usually within the same genus, they can grow on the same roots. If you notice in this plum tree behind me, we have one little stem that's green and the rest is in bloom. That's because those are two different cultivars. And having multiple cultivars can be really important if you're limited on space, like I am here. I have to start pushing my plants all onto one root system so that I can have all of the different cultivars that I want. And it also can help because of pollination, because there's groups like plums that require cross-pollination. Same with apples. They really benefit from having another cultivar nearby to pollinate. And so grafting and putting them on the same tree can help with pollination. I also think it can help with persimmons. If you have animals that are coming to steal all your non-astringent persimmons, put some astringent cultivars on the same tree, and then they'll come and take a bite of that and think that they're all, not ready. So before I get into some of the tools and equipment I brought, one of the bases for grafting, the most important base, is the timing of the year, because you want to have a rootstock that is pushing sap up to heal the wound very quickly. So the most important factor is actually what's underneath, rather than worrying about the perfect alignment or all these other things you might worry about. There's really two things. There's the rootstock really pushing growth, and that your scion wood, which is the cultivar that you're putting on top, that it doesn't dry out before healing takes place. So if you get to break it down to the very base, that's where I like to teach from, is that you need a lot of sap pushing up, and you need to prevent your scion from drying out. So that's things like wrapping it, things like protecting it from sunlight, because that healing process takes time. Now there are a lot of different ways to graft. You can graft as small as a single bud, you can graft sticks, you can graft on the edge, a bark graft or a cleft graft where you have about the same diameter, and each one has unique situations where it's most useful, and so it really depends on what you're grafting, because certain species graft better with a small bud, they heal better. Certain species can do a cleft or a bark graft more easily, so it just kind of depends there. And so whatever you're wanting to graft, you should Google it. So let me take you a little bit closer. So over here, this is a Bruce plum that's in bloom right now with the white, and this is a Gulf Beauty that was bud grafted last year. So this is where I just made a little T and slid a bud into the bark and then cut off right above it. Now I want to force more growth into this bud this year. I allowed this, I didn't need to, but I allowed this branch to grow, and that took some energy away from this. But now I need to put this into full sunlight, and this nice thick branch gives me an opportunity to do some more grafting. So I'm going to be grafting onto this branch and this branch today. And I brought some beauty plum, and I have right over there a Santa Rosa that is just starting to break, so I think I can find some good scion wood still. Whenever you're doing a top working, it's really important that there's a lot of sap flowing up and that it's near the top of the tree getting good sunlight. So this one over here I might do a little higher to try and get it to push up, and I might even trim back one or two of those branches. And then these have a lot, that's why I'm going thicker. I'm going with the bark graft because I want to have all that sap flowing to try and push through and heal into that scion. So let me show you some of the tools. Okay, you're gonna need some standard pruners and saw. Ideally yours aren't rusted like mine, but anything will work. These are bypass pruners, which can smash a little bit as this metal piece pushes against the stem. So if it's a smaller diameter cutting you're making, like for a cleft graft or something, there's some anvil pruners that look like this. And so this, you see, it smashes onto the anvil, so there's more surface area. And so this can make a cleaner cut, but it's only for thinner diameter pieces. And then this is alcohol, so that everything stays sterile. You're trying to keep it as sterile as possible. That's a big part of success, because any sort of bacteria in your scion or something could damage it. And I am not a very sterile person, but I can still be successful, so definitely just give it a try. Having rubber bands is important. So these are a little bit old, but a rubber band, you're going to cut it and you're going to use that to get pressure on the wound. You can wrap the stem, and that will help the healing because it's going to force that connection. Then there's different kinds of blades, but you just need something really, really sharp. Razor blade, box cutter knives work fine, especially the extender ones. But these are the knives I use. This one's thicker, more for like a cleft graft, smashing it open. And then tape. Okay, so other stuff you might need. So this is vinyl tape, and it's super cheap. You can get it from China. The main thing with your different kinds of tapes is their stretch factor. And so this one has semi-decent stretch factor. It's kind of old. I think it was from this last winter. It got a little more brittle. But vinyl does not breathe very well, so it needs to be removed. The plant can't grow through it, but it's definitely the cheapest. This roll was like $3. And then you have parafilm, which is kind of the old standard. And this is this parafilm is definitely, so parafilm, it's like paraffin wax, but in film roll. See the stretch factor there? Mine is not stretching as well as it would if it was newer and wasn't sitting outside all winter. But this stretch is what seals that scion and keeps it from drying out. So parafilm is also good. The plants, if they're really strong, they might be able to push through it, but in general, you need to take that off as well. It doesn't break down. So you have vinyl, you have parafilm, and parafilm is probably, you can get a roll like this for like $5. So it's maybe just a little bit more than vinyl. And then the last one, which is this one right here, see that little perforation? This is called buddy tape. And buddy tape stretches like nobody's business. And it's extra thin, and the buds, the plant can actually push through it. It's better at self-adhering than like the others. So like vinyl, you have to tie a knot at the end, and buddy tape will stick to itself really well. So this is a super good investment if you're doing a lot of grafting, and it's just more expensive. This is for industry people. It's pre-cut into perfect size for wrapping a citrus bud or something down on the trunk, but a really great stretch, and you don't have to worry about leaving it on your graft. Let's see, I got a sharpening stone, an axe for pecan, cleft grafts into big trees. Old school, you can wrap with electrical tape. It's about the same as vinyl, it just has some glue components. It's not as good, but if you were trying to just practice and you had something really easy, maybe apples or something, you could try. I wouldn't cover the scion with it. This is more for just covering the wound, or covering if you were doing like a bark graft where you had a lot of surface area on top to cover, you could make a watertight seal with electrical tape. So now we'll move on to the scions. So here are the scions that I'm going to graft on. This is Pakistan, and this is the beauty plum. And I have these are still cold because I have a cooler right beside me with ice pack. And the main thing about collecting scion wood is you want it to have good buds. So these are, well shaped and everything. For plum, these are reasonably large. It's not like, it's still fully dormant, so they start to swell, but still good. And then you want to keep it very cold on the edge of freezing, so the coldest part of your fridge, and you need to keep it from drying out. So when I collect scion wood, I take my fingers and I flick like 2 flicks of water, or you can do a paper towel where you wet it and then wring it out completely. You just want 100% humidity. You don't want wetness. So this, I'm going to use probably, pieces with 2 or 3 buds to bark graft. So I'll get, multiple opportunities out of this one stick. Here's the Pakistan. You can see really, you know, clearly defined buds that are good and healthy. And I definitely want to add some Pakistan to my garden. So there's a few trees I'm going to mess with. So that's signwood. Keep it from drying out. That's the biggest thing. Keep it alive and store it as little as possible. So signwood collection happens right at the end of January around here for most things. You got to be careful because some of the peaches go really early. So when you're grafting, you need the bark to be slipping, and I'm going to go up above on the part I'm going to remove. But essentially what that is that if you can get the bark to peel, it's easier to get the bark to slip. It's not slipping well here on smaller diameter stuff. So this thick trunk, it really isn't going to slip the same way. Also, this is just starting to break bud and flower. This is not slipping well, but it was because the bark was so thick and I didn't actually cut all the way through it because I have my flimsy knife. So the first thing to do is going to be to ditch about a ½ inch or an inch off the end. I'm going to get rid of that and try and have it as clean as you can. And then I'm going to be cutting a long sloping line for a lot of surface area. So I'm going to start right here and go about an inch. Let me see how to do this in front of the camera. So I'm trying to go in and then flat. I got rid of one bud. All right, so do you see the long sloping angle there? Ideally, I could have had a little more of a shoulder there. Then I'm going to measure about where it is. I actually have a better knife, but about there and about there. And then, oh, so another thing you can do is to kind of just really lightly, do you see how I exposed the green there? The cambium, this can help with contact on this kind of a graft. So I'm doing it at like an angle. Oop, that was a little too much. And then I'm going to slide it in. So I'm going to cut it off on top. And I'm going to put one more on the back side, so I'm going to do it really quick. There's a quick wrap to hold them in place. And this is just parafilm. My old parafilm. So, just going to let that sit for a minute. I'm going to cut a little bit more off of this. So now I'm going to wrap the rest of it in the buddy tape, and this is just to keep the scions from drying out. Ideally, I could have done this before I stuck them, so that would have made it a little bit easier. This is now fully sealed. It had decent connection. There's a lot of sap that should be flowing up and through, and the scions shouldn't dry out too much. It's pretty well shaded. If this was in super full sun, well, these buds are pretty dormant, so it wouldn't matter too much. But that's what I'm going to do on this one. So this is the branch that I just grabbed from my Santa Rosa plum that I'm going to put on this stem right here behind, the thicker one. And I think what's cool, what's going to be the experiment, is you see it's starting to break buds. So these buds right here are the ones I'm interested in using that are actually starting to break. So I think that'll be interesting to see. Whittle it down, kind of wean it down gradually. Here's some other lower grafts. This one I already cut. This guy right here. So basically the principle that's happening there is there's too much flow coming up and it's forcing all these lower buds that are latent. If I don't honor that, then I'll just force more latent buds. I'll get more sucker growth. But if I allow these buds that have broken to have a couple leaves, because a lot of it is also getting a lot of leaf surface area near this wound, because the tree is going to want to compartmentalize to heal it. So that little extra leaf surface area will help. In the end, I'm going to just leave one of them. One is just going to be for healing, and it's probably going to be this one for healing, and this one is going to be the main branch going up. But there's a real danger right here. There's a branch up above this guy that could be in the wind and break some of those. So I got to get that out of the way. Now we can see a little better. Okay, so now you can get a real feel for all the growth that's coming through the grafts and the spacing between the other grafts and how it's going to heal. So here you can see this side has a lot more vigor and has the south side, this side, actually this is part of it, but that little cluster down there is going to just be about healing. And the parafilm split on its own, so you see that it tore there from these grafts kind of pushing out. And so as long as it's not collecting water, which it isn't, I'm just not going to mess with it, because a lot of leaves are going to come in here and shade that out and kind of protect. So here is the bud graft from last year. You can see that, taken off. That's Gulf Beauty, which is a good one. And then this is the Beauty, and I basically cut this about a week ago. Big old mistake, I just forgot about it. So the graft point's down here, but it split really, really early, and so the crotch angle was really, really tight. Essentially, these two branches were going to be fighting each other and a weak point, really mainly the weak point for the future. So ideally, you trim that, as you see it, not months later. I trimmed the top off of this one to suppress it, and once it got suppressed, it was like, oh, I'm out of here. So these branches are okay. That was from a scratch I covered up. But yeah, so I had to cut out a big chunk. Have leaves down at the base, they're just growing really close together. So this is not ideal. I should have done this 2 years ago. This is actually probably only 3 or 4 years old. But I'm going to take this one out completely because I don't like the really steep crotch angles. So you see how they're, kind of funky. And then this one has some nice horizontals. Another reason for the decision to do this grafting and mainly to take out this tree was because in the long term, having two trees this close together creates a lot of included bark. So they were, coming up and their trunks would touch. And when bark is included, there's never really a connection. So even though this tree was even tighter wedged like that and appeared to have a connection, in this range, there really is no connection. So this was just a place for moisture to sit that can bring in some disease and rot, and eventually in the long term, 30 years down the line, one of these trees was probably going to be weakened down here at the base, and it was actually going to be this one, because if you see, this one's got the nice round form, this other one has a big old concave. So what I'm hoping, my grafting tree, it's a little bit leaning, but it's going to recover because I'm going to cut it back into this central area. All right, and here's my work zone. I am already on a ladder, so I'm not going up there. I'm going to cut it off there, here, there, and here. So I'll get 4 main graft areas, a little small ones, to experiment with on the sides and work way down. But I'm going to cut every branch on this tree. It's going to be pretty stressful, a few weeks for it, but the weather is good, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, wrapped. Now I'm going to do a cleft graft where I can actually match the diameter really well. So you see those two. So I can just cut that with the anvil pruners, so I have a pretty good flat edge, wedge in, and have a good, hopefully this one will be a good one. Alright, so there's a cleft graft. That's how cleft grafts are supposed to be done. My sign was actually a little bit too big, and so I focused on lining up the back side. This bottom side is a little bit off, but there's also a diagonal, so that's hitting in a couple spots. So wrapping this, hopefully there's enough energy to push it and go. So you see what a cleft graft looks like. So another thing with the cleft graft is you want the back side thinner than the front side, because the front side is where the connection is. The back side is nothing. So I'm putting this away from you guys. We will see. So this one's going to get a rubber band. It might help. Alright, this mulberry tree is back to the exact same size it was last year when the grafting began. So it's time to check on these grafts that were done earlier this year around April, May. So this was just a seedling mulberry, and it got changed over to Pakistan white and Pakistan regular red. There's grafts. So this is double graft. There is a graft right here under the tape to that, but that's also a graft. And that's also a graft. So that's all Pakistan. In here, I had a lot of grafts fail. They got knocked out because of the wind. But this guy, this branch is grafted. These two are grafted right here at the trunk. So you can see the color change. That's definitely red. Some of the later ones are white. So for sure this one, that plane right here going up, this is the graft point is right there. You can see the V. So that is white Pakistan. And then this branch had a lot of fail. They broke out twice. So that one might get reworked. But even down here, there's some others that are grafted and doing well. So let's bend down. Boom! There's a graft point and a nice strong branch that can grow up and be big and strong. And then that's a bud right there. You can see how it's kind of bulging out. That was a little budding action, and pretty much everything else down low is unimportant. So it was quite a few revisits to get the tree to grow through all the grafts. Obviously it wanted, to sucker and get back to its same size quickly, but it was not too much work, and it's going to get more and more stable. The cut line is going right across there pretty soon, so it'll really push growth into that one and that one, and hopefully heal it over in a year or two. It's been almost a year since that first footage in this video was taken, and it is about time to start thinking about grafting again. And so I'm going to end this video with a little timely reminder about collecting your scion wood, how to store it, because that's what I'm doing today. So I just finished collecting a little bit. I have plenty more to do, but I've got the Pakistan, like from this video, and I've got Methley plum. So the plan this year, most of my grafting is actually going to be focused around peaches. I have a big nectarine tree in the middle of the garden that just nectarines aren't that productive, so I want to put as many peaches on top of that as possible. So that's my new project for collecting scion wood. But I also have a lot of valuable things here, so I'm collecting some for sharing in other gardens and other places. But the timing is hugely important. I was in collecting the Pakistan. Where is it? Here. I was amazed. It's already breaking bud, so it's January 11th, and so mulberry is starting to break, and probably next might be the plums, some of the earlier plums and peaches. So you got to keep an eye on this kind of thing. This is unseasonably early, and now the ducks are coming over and distracting. So you got to beat it. You got to get your scion wood before it breaks bud, before it breaks dormancy. And so it's a little bit earlier on mulberry. A lot of the other things you can wait, and so you'll still get this video with plenty of time. So things like persimmon is really late, pecan is super duper late, and apple, peach, and plum, it all depends on the cultivar there. When you're collecting your scion wood, I've got my paper towel in the bags, and what's really cool that you can see, so what you're going for is 100% humidity with 0% precipitation, or 0% like beading moisture. You know, you don't want it wet, you just want it humid. And so you see how I wrung out that paper towel completely, and it's clouding. I don't know if you can see it. It's clouding on the edge of the Ziploc bag. So that's kind of what you're going for. And then these, if they're fully dormant, they can store for, you know, a couple months and be just fine. I've got them in the cooler. I'm collecting them in the morning. It's reasonably early, and there's some ice packs in the bottom to keep them extra cool on their transition to the fridge. So the main point of this video was just to share a little bit, but to inspire you guys to give it a try, especially if your name is Daniel Reed. Then you really need to start grafting your trees and experimenting with that. And the two that are absolutely the easiest and best are mulberry and fig. They're great ones to learn on because they just have so much sap. When you cut into that, you know, the sap just like shoots out. That can heal like any wound. So practice with mulberry and fig. Practice right now by collecting signwood. So, you know, ask around with your friends, look for a tree that's productive and collect that wood, store it, because in a month or two it's going to be time to start grafting. I'm talking about collecting dormant signwood right now. So things like apple, peach, pear, persimmon, those are all ones that, pecan is another big one, it's got to be dormant. Those are ones that we collect when it's winter, when they're dormant, and then store them for grafting in the spring. But citrus is totally different, and the tropicals are totally different, and mulberry and fig are also different in that they do not have to be dormant signwood in order to be successful as much as with the other ones. So with those tropicals and things that don't have to be dormant, you're going to collect the signwood a lot closer to when you're going to graft it, even potentially the same day whenever possible. So like for citrus, for example, we would collect our signwood in mid-late February, right before it's broken buds. So you need those buds to have not already opened up, so they're just swelling. And then we have to wait like a month or two until the plants themselves are growing and the sap is flowing, growing really actively, and then we'll graft when we have warmer evenings and all that. And so with mulberry and fig, the cool thing about them is they can be grafted, you know, throughout the year. They have so much sap, so it doesn't have to necessarily be collected now. You haven't missed the boat or anything. If you missed your mulberry, you'll get another chance to collect some mulberry signwood. Now when it comes to choosing the signwood out of the tree, there's also some things that might help you. So what you're actually looking for is like the water sprouts, the really vigorous shoots. Now this is because the stems are going to be thicker, they're going to have more water, which is so crucial for that scion to persist and heal. And they're also going to have really straight, strong, you know, good sized buds. So you're looking for the kind of water sprouts that you might naturally cut out if like it's a branch in the wrong spot, or if it's, you know, rubbing but it had a lot of vigor. You'll see a lot of that in like persimmon, peach, apple. A lot of the, you know, the old trees that have been trained to a form will eventually get these water sprouts, and that's great signwood. All you really need is, you know, a few good buds, you know, a single bud, or, you know, so 5 to 7 inches, maybe it depends on the size of your Ziploc bags, but you know, that stick should at least give you a couple options, a couple opportunities to work with. And here come the chickens, apparently. Hey you guys. Well, I think the chickens are here. It is time. I will turn you towards them. Hey, come on, step up, step up. All right, you guys, I hope you learned something from this video. I hope it inspired you to go out and practice your grafting. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.